Welcome to a sponsored webinar by Accountancy Insurance, hosted by CPA Australia, How Cyber Attacks Hit Accounting Firms in 2020. My name is Melissa and I will be hosting this webinar and available for any troubleshooting questions you might have with your WebEx setup. We have people joining us from all over the country for today's webinar. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional owners from around Australia and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I extend this acknowledgement to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who may be joining us today. I would also like to acknowledge that today we are being joined by President and Chairman of the Board, Merrin Kelsall, and Deputy President Rick DeSanti. Thanks for joining us, Merrin and Rick. And now I'd like to introduce you to today's Chair, Nigel Hedges from CPA Australia, who will facilitate this session. Nigel, I'll just open up your microphone and camera.
Hello everybody, and hello Melissa.
Hi Nigel, we can hear you, so over to you.
Great, thank you Melissa, and welcome everybody. As already introduced, my name is Nigel and I'm the Head of Information Security at CPA Australia, and it's my pleasure today to welcome our presenters, Karen McDonald and Rob Collier. The topic today is one that is close to my heart and will be very informative. And in particular, the case studies are great examples of the very real impact of cyber risk in our contemporary environment. But let me introduce our speakers before kicking off the presentation. Karen commenced her insurance career in 1985. She's worked in underwriting and insurance broking companies in Australia and New Zealand. And Karen has specialised in professional indemnity insurance for 20 years. And in most recent years has focused on cyber insurance and how the cover benefits accounting professionals. Karen achieves favourable outcomes for her clients by understanding the profession and seeking cover beyond client expectations. Rob is the Underwriting Development Manager at Nova Underwriting and for the past 5 years, and Rob specialises in the ongoing development and underwriting of cyber liability, professional indemnity and IT liability. Rob has been in the financial lines insurance space for 30 years in Australia and the Lloyd's market in London. And over the past 10 years, Rob has been instrumental in the creation of several cyber liability products for various insurers, including the development of key incident response services, all very important things. So today we'll be taking questions through the Q&A box, as Melissa has mentioned. Please direct your questions to all panellists and we will address questions at the conclusion and we'll do our best with the time remaining. So for any troubleshooting queries, please also send a message to the host using the chat box. Well, it's now time for our session to commence, so I'm going to hand over to Karen.
Thank you, Nigel. So, good morning, everybody, and good afternoon to all over Australia, depending on where you are, and thanks for joining in. For today's session, we've got a lot to cover, so we're going to go through a cybercrime overview, just about some statistics, where we're currently at with cybercrime in Australia, and then we're going to have a bit of a fun quiz, so see how good you are at spotting a scam, and how to eliminate your risk, and then some risk management procedures and something to avoid being a victim of cybercrime. And then Rob's going to finish off with some war stories, horror stories, crime stories, whatever you want to call them. These are actual case studies. So we're going to start off with what is a cyber attack? Well, it's an offensive maneuver employed by individuals or groups that target computer information, infrastructure, computer networks and or personal computer devices by malicious acts. So very, very broad. What you need to remember is that cybercrime does not discriminate. Cyber criminals will target individuals, small business, big business, basically any business that has an online presence on online processing. So cyber attacks on businesses are costing Australia $29 billion every year, and authorities are taking a report every 10 minutes. Now, to put that into perspective, today's presentation is going to last 60 minutes, including questions. So that means by the time we're finished, that 6 reports to authorities will be made. Now, what people don't understand is that the flow-on effects after a cyber attack can be significant. It's not just a matter of turning off your computer, ringing the IT person, turn it back on, the flow-on effects can be huge, especially for the directors of business, and that can be through shareholder class actions, where senior management may face regulatory investigation or litigation. Now, data breaches carry significant trust and reputational risk, and that can result in a revenue loss or share price reduction, and that can attract the attention from ASX or ASIC. Now, you may remember the landmark white property valuers. They suffered several cyber attacks involving 170 data records. Now, the attack was carried out by an individual external to the business with trusted inside access. The person who actually caused this was not after any personal gain, but was there to try and damage the reputation as much as possible. So obviously they were disgruntled, and it cost the business $7 million, and being an ASX company, it did affect their share price. Now, the key messages here is that they were external to the business with trusted inside access. This person was a contractor who'd been with them for 12 years, and that he didn't do it to derive personal gain. There was no financial reward. He was attempting to damage the business as much as possible. And the flow-on effects is huge for this one, because the breach cost the CEO his job alongside 2 board directors. So COVID-19 and cybercrime, unfortunately, does go hand in hand, and to date there's been $3.3 million in losses in COVID-themed scams. Now, some of the most common ones we saw in COVID-19 and through this pandemic were phishing messages. Now, they were designed to attract information to get a response. So when the pandemic first entered into the worldwide space and into our lives, a lot of people were on edge. And so therefore, lots of cases, lots of people testing positive, lots of people getting tested. So phishing messages were out there spruiking for information, and they wanted to send you an email or a message saying that you are due for a COVID-19 test. Now, I know I'd be on high alert. And I think, have I been exposed to someone who's tested positive? Have I been in a hotspot? So I would definitely open up a message that said you need to turn up for an appointment for a COVID-19 test. We all heard about the fake online stores where there were these bogus stores selling face masks because there was a shortage. And so people would go in there, order their face mask, submit their credit card details. The store was closed down and the goods never arrived and your money was gone. Another one was superannuation. Those that wanted early access to the superannuation, unfortunately, they were scams. And again, unfortunately, they do attract, they're vulnerable. And when people really need their funds, and that's just where they are, they're cyber criminals. 47% of Australians, that's almost half the population, have received a fraudulent text message or phone call since COVID-19 panic began in March. So it's likely to be one of us. And ACCC confirmed that 24,000 Australians have had their personal data stolen this year, with identity theft up to 55%. Now, prior to COVID-19, we were seeing a lot of ransomware. Now it's identity theft. Okay, cybercrime, should you be concerned? Yes, because cybercrime is the fastest growing crime in the world and it's only getting worse. Of the notifiable data breaches through to January and June this year, they come out twice a year. So these are the latest statistics. 518 data breach notifications, 26 of those are in your area, in your sector, legal, accounting, management services sector. So we can break this down even further. 15 were malicious or criminal attacks. That's phishing email, like I said, the COVID-19 testing, to obtain credentials or hacking of systems or networks, rogue employees, improperly accessing or disclosing personal information, theft of paperwork or data storage device, such as a USB. And also the 11 was human error. You cannot do anything about human error. You can tell your staff not to open bogus emails, but unfortunately they're going to. And that's where lots of information is sent to the wrong person. That could be tax file numbers. Now, I hear it all the time. Now, accountants are prime targets due to the sensitive personal information they hold on their clients, but I'm hearing all the time that so many accountants think it's not going to happen to them. Now, I'm going to show you shortly in a few slides' time some of the reasons why accountants think it's not going to happen to them and some of the excuses. And you'll see that, yeah, it really does happen. And Rob is also going to show that in some of his slides. So here we go. This is where we're going to have some fun here. And I'm going to put it back onto you. So I'm going to put up a series of emails, and I want you to let me know what you think, whether you would open up this email or not. So the first one is, would you upgrade your Dropbox if you received this email? Hi, your Dropbox is full and no longer syncing files. New files added to your Dropbox folder won't be accessible. Other devices won't be backed up online. Upgrade your Dropbox today and get 1,000 gigabytes. Happy Dropboxing from the Dropboxing team. Now have a real good look at that. Now take in everything, take in like the logo, take in the colors of the logo, take in the grammar. And then on the right-hand side, there is a poll. And I want you to answer, would you upgrade your Dropbox if you received this email? A, yes, probably. B, no way. Or C, not sure. So over to you. Okay. This is an actual legitimate Dropbox email. And it's interesting, isn't it? Oh, a lot of people said not sure. Okay, all right. Well, the reason why I put this one up is because, unfortunately, Dropbox is one of those that is often used by cyber criminals for phishing attacks. And a lot of companies will not allow Dropbox for that very reason. So in this particular case, a quick search on Google would show that this is one of the domains that Dropbox does actually use. But that's good that you're actually very cautious. Okay, the next one, MYOB appears to have sent you an email. Dear client, below is an invoice for $6,400. Payment is due by Monday, the 10th of September. View invoice. Okay, so take it all in, like I said before. Have a look at the grammar, have a look at how it's sent to you, have a look at the logo, have a look at the colors of the logo. And then when you're ready, again, do you click the link with the email to download the invoice? And it's a fake. And, oh, good. So you said no way. That's wonderful. Okay, so cyber criminals often exploit well-known trusted brands like MYOB, zero into it. Now, the clear giveaways here was Dear Client. It would have said Dear Karen. And the unfamiliar company name. If you did hover over the view invoice, you would see the real destination where it actually came from. Now, always remember to think before you click. I must drive our IT department insane with the amount of emails I send to them saying, can I open this? But I think it's best to be safe and sorry. Okay, the next one is, would you open the attachment? You received this email that advises the ATO requires you to review the tax documents in the attached PDF. So, dear sir, sorry for the late response. Our tax unit staff's on holiday. We've got an instruction from the ATO, and it says regards, Alpha Tax Agent, has an ATO agent license number, has a telephone number, even has the extension and the logo. So take it all in, have a good look at that. So many ATO schemes going on at the moment and has been for some time. Would you open the attachment? And it's a fake. Oh, yeah, so you're pretty good. No way. By not opening it, you have saved yourself thousands of dollars. So as I said before, there's been a number of ATO scams over the years. Telltale signs here. Again, it said, dear sir, it would say your own name. It's not a legitimate ato.gov.au email address, and it's full of errors. So this is probably pretty obvious. We've got another one here. Is this a real Energy Australia bill? Energy Australia, electricity e-bill summary, dear customer, view bill, due date 28th of February 2020, total due is $199.50. Now, if I got a bill for $199.50 in the middle of summer after I've had the air conditioning going full stop, then I probably would open that. And I think that's very cheap. Why is that? But I want you to take it all in, like I said before. Have a look at the logo. It even has the Energy Australia trademark and an ABN, the copyright. So is this a real Energy Australia bill? Over to you. What do you think? And it's a fake. Yep. Good. Yeah. See, good. Very suspicious. Very suspicious. Okay. And again, if you had clicked on this one, it would have led you to a malicious file download. And this is the last one. If you receive this email from a manager, would you process the payment? Okay, it's from Jane to John. Hi, John. Please find and close vendor banking instructions for a payment that's supposed to go out the previous week. I need you to process it immediately. I'm a bit busy now. I'll give you a call within the hour again. Payment. So John would probably know how Jane would send her emails and would she use words like vendor banking instructions. And you'll notice there is a saying process immediately. I'm a bit busy right now. So take it all in. Have a good look at that. And if you receive this email from your manager, would you process the payment? And it's a fake. Yep. And so majority has said no way. That's good. So if my manager asked me to do something straight away, I would probably do it. But in this case, I could be forgiven for not doing so. Social engineering fraud is also known as business email compromise. And you'll often find it comes from someone within the company or supposedly of a higher position, typically CEO, CFO, MD or similar. So I know some of them are pretty basic and pretty obvious, but the thing is the key message here is getting you looking at them and what to look out for. So 6 ways to spot an email scam. The email does not address you directly. It doesn't say dear account, it says dear sir, dear madam. Bad grammar, they are getting better. So you often get the bad grammar is something of the past now, and bad spelling, they're improving. Distorted images. So whilst they try their best to have a true, accurate image of Dropbox or MYOB, it's always fuzzy and not quite clear. Instructions to click a link, like I said before about the COVID-19 testing, reason for you to open up that link, and then of course the malware is distributed. State strange origins, where it's from, and a sense of urgency. Please pay now, immediately. I'm a bit busy right now, but I don't want you to call back. Now, as I said before, a lot of accountants say it's not going to happen to me, and these are some of the excuses or reasons I hear why they don't think they're going to be a victim of cybercrime. Because we use the cloud. I think because they use the cloud and they don't have a server, they're not at risk, but you'll find out when Rob does one of his slides. That's not actually quite true. The hackers only target the big guys. Again, that's not true because it's actually a lot easier for hackers to hack into a number of small businesses than one big business. We back up regularly. And some of the excuses I hear are, we back up regularly, so we don't need to take out insurance because if we do become a victim of cybercrime, then it doesn't take that long to get us back to where we were before. Our staff don't open bogus emails. Well, guess what? We're only human, and they will. And this cartoon is so true. In this corner, we have firewalls, encryption, antivirus software, etc. And in this corner, we have Dave. We're always going to have Dave, and every company has a Dave. So it doesn't matter how many times you tell your staff members not to open up bogus emails, they will. And not just staff, we see it from partners and principals and directors as well. So some risk management, some key tips to take away from today is regular backup. Backup, backup, backup. You need to purge your data. Remove old data from your systems to make it easier for your backups. Now, make staff aware of what not to open. Now, at lunchtime, and this is during Facebook, At lunchtime, I wander around the office and I go past other people's desks, and there I can see them on their lunch break on Facebook using our computer systems. Now, what happens is usually if there's a disaster, there'll be so many photos going around which contains a malware. It could be a photo, it could be a link. And so what happens on Facebook is that these cyber criminals will throw in these fake news photos, and like I said, embodied with a malware. And so your staff member who's on Facebook on your computer at lunchtime, they go to their Facebook and they see that photo and they click on it, and the virus is dispersed. And what they do is they like it and they share it onto their friends. Their friends also in their office at lunchtime on Facebook on their computers, their work computers, they also get that photo and they say, oh, Julie has liked this particular photo and shared it with me, so I will open it up. And same thing, the virus is dispersed, and so on and so on and so on, because she will share that to her friends and etc. And what happens is these cyber criminals, they will just sit there and that virus will remain dormant until such time they will do something with it. So again, make staff aware what not to open at Facebook at lunchtime, okay? But I'm going to leave that one with you. Set up auto updates. Do not leave it. There's a reason why we have auto updates, and it's to increase our security. So with your phone and your iPad, leave it on at night and automatically do an update. Now with LinkedIn, be careful who wants to connect with you. We're more likely to connect with someone we don't know on LinkedIn rather than Facebook. So we go to a conference, if you remember what they are, we used to have them, and a few days later, someone wants to connect with you on LinkedIn. And you're like, okay, this person wants to connect with me. They said they were at XYZ conference. Were they? I'm not too sure. I must have been because I was there. And you connect with them, but you don't know enough about them, and you should do your research. But on Facebook, if someone wants to be friends with us, then we'll do our research because that's our personal information. Do we want to let them into our personal lives? And so therefore we will do our research, we'll see who their friends or friends are friends. So with LinkedIn, just be very careful. Now, these measures will not stop a cyber attack. Antivirus software, firewall and IT support, they are all important measures you need to have in place. In addition, you need to have a standalone cyber insurance policy. Not third parties, which you often see under an extension under a professional indemnity policy, but a standalone insurance policy to make sure you're fully protected. Insurance should be seen as an additional layer to your security and not an alternative. Now, our product is called Cyber Shield, underwritten by Nova Underwriting, and it's designed specifically for accounting firms, and the cover is relevant to the needs of the profession. Competitive premiums are a certainty, and cover is very comprehensive, range from data recovery to privacy, regulatory, defence costs, plus much, much more. So it's now my turn to hand it over to Rob, and Rob is going to just go through some of those case studies because, like I said before, so many accountants think it's not going to happen to them, but as Rob's going to show, yes, it does.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you, Nigel, for the introduction in the beginning, and thank you to all the members for having me along today. As Karen mentioned, we've compiled a selection of claims examples to give you an idea of what can and does happen if you've been hacked, and many of these breaches occur after an employee has opened one of those dodgy emails that Karen just highlighted to you. Overall, we've seen an increase in cyber claims, particularly over the last 6 months, with the majority of office-based employees working from home now. So it's essential that you and your staff are aware of what can go wrong, and as Karen just highlighted, those areas that you need to look at in terms of risk management to prevent a hack. So moving on to the first one, we talk about a ransomware attack. Now Karen did mention this in one of her slides. These are becoming more and more common, and ransom demands are now becoming, are increasing in value. You'll see in this example that I'll run through the demand was originally just $8,000, but we're now seeing those increase, seeing 10,000, 20,000, 40,000, 100,000. So it is increasing. And it's not just the ransomware, it's not just that ransom that they're demanding. The criminals are now taking that information that they've got from your system and putting it up for sale. So in this particular example, we had a small accounting firm with 10 staff, suffered a ransomware attack after one of the staff opened what they thought to be an invoice attachment on email, and that attachment unfortunately contained what is known as the crypto locker virus. The computers froze within the office, and a message popped up demanding $8,000, and as often seen in these situations, they're payable in Bitcoin because they're untraceable. And they had to pay that amount to release their system. And this would increase by a further $1,200 per day up until such time it was paid. Now, we often see these ransomware demands made, particularly in the financial or the accounting sort of industry, around tax time, around end of quarters, when BAS statements are due, when the accountants are most vulnerable and are willing to pay the ransom to release their systems. Now, in this particular case, total costs all up were a bit over $83,500, and the costs were broken up not only in payment of the ransom, but costs of IT forensics, rebuilding the system after it was discovered in this case that it was full of bugs, business interruption costs whilst the business was unable to operate, and public relations costs, along with costs of notifying the Privacy Commissioner, which must be done, together with customers and suppliers who had their personal information breached. So there's many factors involved in these cyber breaches and the claims. Move on to the next one. Okay, the next one, we have a breach of privacy. Now, not every claim necessarily involves a physical hack by a third party. Often it can be the fault of an employee doing something unknowingly, and in this particular case, an employee of an accounting firm accidentally left a USB stick on a taxi on their way home after a night out from work. Now, this could be a USB stick, it could be a mobile phone with access to the data at work, it could be a laptop. Now, discovering the loss, the employee notified his employers, who then engaged the services of the incident response team. Now, the incident response team is something that we offer as part of our insurance policy. And so that insurance response team steps in and worked with the firm to identify which client's personal data was exposed on that USB stick. And it turned out that around 175 clients were affected, and they had to be notified individually as well as the Privacy Commissioner. In addition, credit monitoring services were retained for the next 12 months. So whenever someone's personal information, including possible credit card information, is put out there in the big bad world, that information has to be monitored to determine if someone else is using it somewhere in the world. So we offer as part of the policy a credit monitoring service, as well as the services of a public relations firm to restore confidence and mitigate any negative publicity generated from the event. And as you can see on the right-hand side, total costs of this was $246,000. Plus, in addition to that, there were lawsuits being brought by those who had their personal information breached against the accounting firm. Our next example is hacking, and this shows sort of the importance that you must limit admin access where you can to individual staff members. In this particular case, you had a disgruntled employee of a financial services firm, changed all the administrator passwords to the network once they left. This effectively shut the entire company out of their systems, and no one was able to log in. Our incident response team was contacted, who then brought in the IT security experts to gain access to the system. Now, because of downtime, I understand this one, the actual business was out of action for around 3 weeks. So So they determined their business interruption costs were around $330,000. Our next example is in terms of malware, and I know Karen touched on this on a number of her slides in terms of when you are clicking on a link, malware is what is often put onto your system. And this also refers to a cloud provider. Now, many times we get advised by clients that they don't feel as if they have an exposure because all their information is on the cloud. Now, in actual fact, the entity is responsible for information that is on the cloud. So it's very important that when you are using a cloud service provider to hold your information, that you ensure that provider has adequate security in place, as you would have if you had information yourself. So in this particular case, computer system of an accounting firm's cloud provider was disabled as a result of an aggressive computer virus. Incident response team was notified and immediately set about locating the breach and deleting the virus. Eventually, systems are restored and the damaged lost data is retrieved at great expense. Now, what we often find is, whilst a minimum level of risk management is having daily backups of your information, we sometimes find that those daily backups are also part of the virus, so they're effective. Now, in this particular case, again, business interruption came into it, and the total cost sat around $300,000, so not an insignificant amount. Identity theft. This could be as a result of a USB stick. In this particular case, one of our clients suffered a number of laptops were stolen from the office. The criminals who broke into the office were able to access information of both clients and personnel off those laptops through having access to the system, and several clients became victims of identity theft. Now, this can be in terms of credit cards being produced. We've seen where passports have been produced, where people have had their identity stolen, and they may find that their details are being used on the other side of the world. Now, in this particular case, those clients who had their identity stolen sued the accountant, and in addition, the accounting firm suffered from costs of having to identify affected clients, as well as the Privacy Commissioner. And as mentioned before, the credit monitoring services was put in place for 2 years. So the total cost of that one was $140,000. Next one, social engineering. And this is probably currently our most common claim that we're seeing. And it's probably more so because of the ease with which they can access money, and the cash that they obtain is usually instantaneous. So this particular case, late on a Friday afternoon, and we find these things often happen on a Friday afternoon, and this one happened before a bank holiday weekend. A senior staff member of an accounting firm received an email purporting to be from a client, advising change of bank account details of that client and requesting urgent payment be redirected to the new account. Now, the email looked genuine and the employee paid the funds. Now, often you'll find that the cyber criminals are sitting in the system for months and determining who's who within the organisation, and they're watching emails, and they can take on that person's personality in terms of how they write an email and pretending to be those people. So it's quite convincing. Now, in this particular case, after the employee had paid the funds to the fraudulent account, the client contacted the accounting firm following up payment. So that's the client who was meant to be paid, and the staff advised them that it had been paid. It was determined that it hadn't been paid, and the firm suspected a breach, contacted our incident response hotline, and after investigation it was found that the network had been breached 6 weeks earlier, and the funds had been lost and they weren't able to be recouped from the banks. The total cost of that one was around $174,000. So you can see from those claims examples, they're just a few covering off a few different areas of our policy. But as I did mention, we are seeing an increase in them now that people are working from home. So it's essential that you're putting in place risk management procedures. And I think, what we've found, because a lot of our claims stem from employees opening up dodgy emails, is that training of your staff and regular training of your staff to ensure that they know what to look for in an email. So that finishes up my segment on the claims. So I'll throw it back to Nigel, and we'll open up some questions.
Thanks for that, Rob, and thanks, Karen and Rob, for that session. Some really good information there, very informative, and a lot of awareness against the backdrop of the increased regulatory and litigation risk you spoke of, and also that increase in cyber risk just generally. And thanks for sharing the vectors of attack that you see in recent times and the case studies. They are all too real, unfortunately, and I've seen my fair share in the industry over the last 20 years. And finally, also the clarity around the very valuable cyber insurance policies. So we will look to the Q&A, and I will pick some questions from the Q&A box. I might just start though, Karen, if you don't mind me asking, what advice would you give the attendees about how to follow up generally or specifically when acquiring cyber insurance?
Okay, so the next slide over, Accountancy Insurance, you can jump onto our website, accountancyinsurance.com.au, and there you can go and complete a proposal form online, and we'll submit a quotation to you. So it's a very, very simple process.
Great. And another, maybe 2 or 3 specific characteristics of a good cyber insurance policy in your eyes?
Look, there's so many insurance policies for cyber at the moment in the market for the end user to buy, and some are more expensive and some are cheaper than others. So don't always go for the cheapest. There's a reason why it's so cheap. Because at the end of the day, you need the policy to respond. And what I said before was, don't always rely on the third party only under a PI policy. You need to have your own standalone cyber insurance policy. Even better if you had a cyber shield one. But what you need to look for is the excess. So whilst the premium might be very cheap wherever you go to, the excess may be very high. So that's the period the downtime period before you can make a claim. Now, with our policy, it is 10 hours, but we have seen, Rob and I have seen in the market, 12 hours, 24 hours, even 48 hours before you can make a claim, which is ridiculous. Security of the insurer, like I said, there's so many policies out there, but you need to have a sound insurer to be there to pay the claim. And also the loss of revenue period. So if you are down for, say, 2 weeks, unfortunately, and you want to make a claim for the loss of revenue, loss of profits, is there an actual date or a period where it expires, or is it ongoing? So those are the important areas you need to look at.
Great, thanks for that. I might switch gears. There's a couple of technical questions for you, Rob, here. I'll start with Annette has asked, does antivirus protect from malware, or is malware protection a different type of software?
No, your antivirus can protect from certain malware viruses, and that's why it's essential that you constantly update your antivirus. And when you get a notice of updated patches, you always need to be updating as they come through, because it changes on a minute-to-minute basis. And if the criminal's locked out from using a certain type of malware, they'll then move on to the next version. So whilst antivirus won't stop all versions of malware, it will certainly stop a majority.
Yeah, great. Now, maybe complementing that, Yeah, a lot of folks are now starting to roll out multi-factor authentication. How effective do you think that is in complementing the strategy around controls?
Yeah, well, I think now, Nigel, it's essential as a risk management tool, part of your armament. It certainly adds that extra layer of security. And I guess we probably saw banks being the first to utilise this sort of risk management, going back, 5 years, where you would get once you tried to access your bank account, you would get an SMS message with a code, and you would then have to enter that code into the system to gain access to your bank account. We now see it in things like Qantas frequent flyer and a number of other areas. So I think now it's becoming an essential form of risk management, and it just gives you that extra certainty, an extra layer that a cyber criminal has to get through.
Yeah, great. I've got a question for both of you, but before I do that, since we're on the technical tack, a good question here. How much comfort can we take from penetration testing, and how often should it be done, and what sorts of risks should it cover?
Yep. Well, again, I'll take this one in terms of penetration testing. Again, we see that as an essential part of a testing process. It allows the organisation to determine if there are any holes within their system. And there's many good firms out there that can provide those services at a relatively cheap rate, where you give them access to your system, and they'll act as a criminal and try and gain access where they can, advise you of where those holes are, and you can then implement risk management procedures to prevent access.
Good. No one just in, I think I'm going to ask this before I throw the question for both of you. Denise has asked, how safe are the password management tools? Do they ever get hacked?
I think in general they're safe because they have the ones offered by, I guess, the big companies like your Microsofts and Google and the like, because they do have multiple layers of security on them, and if they didn't, no one would use them. So I certainly haven't seen any issues with them. And also the ones that are provided by often when you get your antivirus software, you'll also, as part of that, have access to that sort of software. So as an underwriter, we haven't seen any issues to date with those passwords being hacked from those systems.
And I suppose there's a couple of open source and also commercial options in the password management space, and I guess folks have to think about the support and some of the other additional benefits they get of a paid solution, notwithstanding they're actually a commercial grade solution on the market. Would you say?
In terms of open source software, sorry, you're talking about the risk of utilising open source software. Yeah, it's certainly an area where it's hit and miss. The best thing to look for, I guess, is the number of users or the number of times that's been used, and to possibly search that particular software to see feedback and see comments from people who have used it, because it certainly is an area that is open to containing bugs because someone else has obviously produced it. So certainly an area to watch out for. Okay,
well, thanks for that. Might take a bit of a time break on the technical ones, give you a chance to catch your breath. There is a good question here, though. It's something that I've certainly had a lot of thought on, and it's from Janine. How likely is it that the cyber criminals get caught? I suppose there's a domestic and international element to this.
Very rarely. There's very rarely a cyber criminal is caught. I think, we've probably seen on the news in the past month or so in some of those bigger, larger hacks that make the international news. It takes months and months to track down these people. Often they're in, a shoebox unit hidden away in the Ukraine somewhere. and it's just impossible to locate them. So very rarely do we find the people responsible, and very rarely are they charged.
Yeah, thanks for that. Anything from you, Karen, or happy with that?
I'm very happy with that answer. You covered it all.
Now, there was a slide, I think slide 25, where you mentioned about the photos. It was specifically on Facebook and LinkedIn, and Darren had a question, was how can you tell if a photo has malware attached? Did you have any other comment that might help clarify that one?
You can't. Unfortunately, these hackers, these scammers are so sophisticated, very hard to detect. But my message on that one was it's more about just with your staff members using Facebook on your computers. So if they're doing it on their phone, let them do what they want to do. But the key message was that just be careful when they're using your system.
Yeah, that's a good one. Thank you. And Ed had another question, which is Dropbox a safe platform to use? We did see your slide, and that was legitimate application, but is it safe?
Well, I know for a fact that our company will not allow Dropbox, and the reason being is because, like I said, it's been a victim and attacked so many times. Well, what's your take on that, Rob?
Nothing's guaranteed. And whilst Dropbox does have, many layers of security, because it is such a well-used, piece of software, there's lots of ways around it, and the hackers are always working on ways to access Dropbox accounts. So it's like anything really. It's like your social media accounts, your Instagram, your Facebook. They're all hackable by people who want to get in.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I think Dropbox and a lot of those file sharing platforms have spent a lot of money on security and privacy features, but they still can be used because they're just a platform at the end of the day.
Yeah. I guess the best advice is don't post anything in those file sharing sites that you don't want someone else to see, that you don't want to see.
Yep.
Yeah, which is always hard, isn't it? Because I know a lot of accountants use it to share information.
Yeah. Now there's another question here, and I imagine this would be quite an important one because it's about PDF invoices, and I'd imagine there's a lot of PDF invoices flying around the internet. Jenny's asked, is PDF invoices attached in an email a risk, or are we talking about links?
Both, yeah. So I gave an example earlier on, and I also am aware of one of our clients who opened up a PDF invoice and fell victim to cybercrime. So, yeah, links and also attachments, invoices, PDFs. Would you agree with that, Rob?
Absolutely, because often you'll have a link that's attached to a PDF document. So it's not actually, you'll click on the PDF document and it'll open it, but then it opens access to a link to allow the criminal access.
Okay.
And I might just add, with invoices and with what we're seeing on the social engineering is, another essential piece of risk management to prevent yourself from being affected is if you do receive an invoice, always ring that person who sent the invoice. If there's a change of bank account details, always ring that person to confirm the change of bank details. Because a lot of the claims around social engineering have been change of bank account details, and they're done via email, and the individual staff member will update those bank account details and then pay that fraudulent account. So it's essential that your staff pick up the phone and speak to that person who has sent the email to you, or a contact email at that firm.
Yeah, good. Thanks for that. So another question here that's maybe for Karen. I think the question is from Michael, and it says, any difference for a retired accountant with a part-time at home with 100 or so clients? Maybe that's a potential question around the costings, I think. But is there any difference for a retired accountant with a part-time job at home with 100 or so clients?
Everyone's at risk, so no.
Short and sweet.
And the thing is, in the proposal form, we ask about your security. We ask a number of questions so we can determine the risk, but everyone is at risk. So, of course, you know, his premium will be completely different to a business who's got a lot more staff members and on a full-time basis.
Cool. Okay. And there's a question. This may be what is the rule of thumb approach to take for determining the limit of liability amount for your policy, and do you work off turnover or apply a percentage or similar? That's from Glenn.
Okay, well, I'll answer part of it, Rob, and then you can take over. From an underwriting point of view, from my point of view, take as much as you can afford. I always say that to all my clients, as much as you can afford, because you have too little. But if you really wanted to start off small, then the minimum limit is $250,000. It's better than not having anything at all.
I guess, and from an underwriting perspective, what we look at to rate risk is the size of the business. If we're just talking about accounting businesses, we're talking about the number of records that they hold, the type of records that they hold, and that's in terms of personal information such as credit card information, tax file numbers, all that sort of information that they hold, that is valuable information for criminals. So not only look at the size, the turnover, we're also looking at the type of information and the number of personalised information that they hold.
Great. Okay. Got another question. I might add to this question if Carla will allow me. Question is, good afternoon. Do you have any examples of cyber risk policies for accounting firms, or where to find these? And I'd just maybe extend by saying, is there any other risk resources that you think would be worth sharing with the attendees?
Just looking for information about what policies are out there.
Yeah, examples of maybe templates of cyber risk policies for accounting firms.
Okay. I'll just think about that one for a minute. What about you, Rob?
Well, in terms of sites to look at for more information, probably one of the best ones, sites, is the oaic.com.au, and that's the Office of Australian Information. And they put a lot of information on there about recommended minimum levels of risk management. I know one of Karen's slides took some information from there on one of their most recent support reports in terms of number of claims or number of notifications to the Privacy Commissioner, and where those claims were coming from, or where those notifications were coming from, like which industry, because they look at, the finance industry versus the health industry versus the education industry. So there's a lot of information in that website that I think a lot of businesses could get some good tips from.
Yeah, and like I said before, there's a lot of policies out there, some good, bad, and different. And it must be very confusing for a lot of people when they go to purchase which is a good policy or not. And that's when a good broker can come into hand and, can you diversify all of these and go take through and dissect them and tell you which one's the best one for you. And that's why we have the unique one, which is Cyber Shield, specific to the accounting profession.
Fantastic. Well, once again, I think that was all the questions that have been posed. Thanks, Karen and Rob. I'll now hand back to you, Melissa.
Thanks, Nigel, and thanks again to Rob and Karen. Thanks, everyone, for also joining the session today. So in the next 3 working days, you'll receive an evaluation survey accompanied by a recording of this webinar. We really appreciate your feedback, as it is extremely valuable to CPA Australia to help us deliver better events for you. Thanks again, and we look forward to welcoming you to another CPA Australia webinar soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.